Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulihil Kareem. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahi alladhi arsala rasulahu bil huda wa dinil haq liyuzhirahu ala ad-din kulli walau kariha al-mushrikun. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa Allah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abdahu wa rasuluhu. Amma ba'd. Ya ayyuhal hadirin, ittaqullah, ittaqullah, ittaqullah. Inna Allaha ma'al muttaqin. We live in extraordinary times. These are times that define human progress by the speed of light and our capacity to absorb change. These are also times when Islam and Muslims are coming under unprecedented pressure all over the world. And it is not just physical pressure, ideological, so much so that even the Quran and the person of the Prophet ﷺ are not spared in this day and time. It behooves us at this point in history to know who we are so that not only can we survive, but also overcome the difficulties that we face. Inshallah, today's khutbah, a brief one, is about faith, iman. And what we'll do is to take an excursion on the chariot of faith, if you will, through the garden of history. Because as the Prophet ﷺ said, faith, iman, has 72 dimensions. The number 72 has no specific meaning except to connote that it has many aspects to it, infinite number of aspects to it. It's an ocean that is inexhaustible, unfathomable. Or if you like another analogy, we'll ride a boat, the boat of faith, and take a dive into the ocean of faith. And let's see what kind of diamonds, what kind of undescribable gems we find in there. Faith is ni'mah. It is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a gift to humankind, through which humankind finds its way back to the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is a gift given to chosen few. It is not an attribute of the mind. Do not confuse faith with belief. People say, I believe in something. Belief is an attribute of the mind, whereas faith is an attribute of the heart. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala illuminates that heart which He wants to illuminate, and only he or she who has that illumination is able to carry the light of the lamp. It is an attribute of the heart. It is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let's take this excursion. Let's recall how it is that people, men and women of faith, through the centuries have carried this lamp forward. What has been the effect of faith upon history, upon men and women? Recall, there was a man named Bilal ibn Rabah, a very humble man, a beautiful man, an African man, a beautiful man. He said, Wahada. He believed. His heart was illuminated by contact with the light of lights through Nur Muhammadi, through our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Those who did not like the fact that his heart was illuminated by the light of faith put him out there in the sun, the hot desert sun of Arabia. And as if that was not enough, they brought in stones, hot stones, in the sizzling heat of Arabia. And those of us who have gone to Arabia would appreciate how hot those stones can get, the temperature of those stones could be no less than 160 degrees Fahrenheit or more. And they put those stones on his chest and he said, Wahada. And what was the impact of it? And let's look at briefly the history of Africa as to what the impact of this great man was on the history of Africa. It is said that one of the descendants of Bilal ibn Rabah migrated to Libya and from there migrated south to Lake Chad area. And there, representatives of the Mandinga tribe, the powerful Mandinga tribe, which today inhabit the Niger Delta of Senegambia and Niger, that area. They were exposed to the light of Islam. They carried it to West Africa. And what was the impact of that? The impact was all of West Africa became Muslim as early as the 10th century. One man who took the Shahada, and an entire region of the continent becomes Muslim. And ask yourself, what was the impact of that? In the 10th century, Africa gave birth to the only mass movement in Islamic history, the Morabitin movement, which carried the message of Islam from West Africa all the way into Spain and through southern France to the very shores of Lake Geneva, which is today in Switzerland. One man taking the Shahada, he said, La ilaha illallah. And there you found La ilaha illallah on the shores of Lake Geneva. And what was the further impact? Islam bankrolled the Muslim world, indeed all of Afro-Asia, with the gold of Ghana. It was known for gold and ivory. It was a rich area, and it still is a rich area, exploited, but it's a rich area. One man taking the Shahada, transforming an entire continent. It became the reservoir of manpower that was responsible for holding up, shoring up Muslim presence in Spain for 700 years. Africa gave birth to the greatest of the world travelers, Ibn Battuta, in the 14th century, who traveled all the way from Tangiers to China, documenting for us, taking a snapshot of the Islamic world as it existed in the 14th century. And if we know something about what was going on in the 14th century, whether it be in the onset of the Ottoman Empire, or in the Mamluk Empire of the time, or the reign of Muhammad bin Taghlaq in India and Pakistan or Afghanistan, what was going on in China at the time, the trade routes in East Africa. Read up on Ibn Battuta, one man saying La ilaha illallah. The impact that was the transformation of the entire continent. Let's move on a little bit. Let's ask ourselves what else has been the impact of faith upon history. Let's traverse to the 13th century, when the simultaneous onslaught of the Crusaders in the West and of the Mongols from the East devastated much of the Islamic world. And for the young people, if you think you're in trouble, ask yourself, what was the position of the Muslim world around the year 1258 when Baghdad fell to the onslaught of the Mongols? 3/4 of the Islamic world was completely decimated. When I say decimated, I mean 90% or more of the men, women, and children were slaughtered. The countries all the way extending from China, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Iran, Western Pakistan up to the Indus River, Eastern Anatolia, Syria, Iraq, decimated, completely destroyed. Baghdad, decimated. Dams pulled down. Libraries burned. Scholars gone. Surface. How did Islam rediscover itself, if not through faith, Iman? How did it happen? Ask yourself, how did it happen? Let's look at one or two of the instances, because time is very short, and I want to communicate to the young people the power of faith and how faith can and will transform, will help us in the predicaments that we are in. It so happened that in the year 1221, there was a prince named Jalaluddin. We read about all the devastations of Genghis Khan. We don't know much about Jalaluddin. Jalaluddin was an Afghan. He was a prince, a valiant prince. It so happened he was the only one who faced Jalaluddin in open combat, a man of faith. Indeed, at one occasion he would have succeeded had it not been an intervention of faith and had Genghis Khan not descended from his horse and gone out to do something else. At a place called Attak, which is today in West Pakistan, about 150 miles from Islamabad. Those of you who are Pakistan will appreciate it, and those who are from Afghanistan will appreciate it. This man took a stand. His guard was cut down. He was all alone. And he said, La ilaha illallah. And riding on his horse, he plunged into the river Indus, which was at that time in full spate. Mighty river it was. And swam all the way to Delhi. Why? To preserve his faith. What happened to the Mongols? Those who destroyed Islam, or the Islamic, not Islam, Islamic world, the Muslims. What happened to them? In the year 1251, it so happens, one of the princes of the Mongols, his name was Baraka Khan. Don't read the internet and all of those things. Not only do they not give you the correct information, my dear young people, they give you wrong information. They even change the names. They call him Barke Khan or whatever Khan. His name was Baraka Khan. Baraka, as Baraka from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He met a group of Sufi sheikhs in Uzbekistan. And he was so impressed by what they had to teach, he enrolled in a seminary in Uzbekistan. Converted, accepted Islam. And within 50 years, those who had destroyed the Islamic world themselves became the standard bearers of Islam. And it was they who carried Islam from Central Asia and Iran into India, Pakistan, Indonesia, Malaysia, Sub-Saharan Africa, Eastern Europe, through the Ghazis of Rum, which we call the Ottoman Turks. Faith transforms people. Another example. How many examples can we give? It is related that Sayyidina Abdul Qadir Jilani, great man, one of the greatest of human beings who ever lived, a man of faith, a great man, after whom the Qadiriya order is named. He was only 8 years old. His mother said to him, now that you have learned everything that you can learn here in northern Persia, you go to Baghdad. And what I'm going to do is to give you the few coins that I have, because his father had passed away. He was already an orphan. She sewed these few coins into his cloak. And as it happens those days, caravans were attacked. His caravan was attacked. And the robber, the chief robber, confronted all of the people in the caravan and said, give me all the wealth that you have. Give me all the coins that you have. Everybody gave. And then finally he asked them, is anyone hiding anything? This boy of 8, he comes forward and he says, my mother has sewed so many coins in my robe. And the man, the robber, is so impressed that then and there he takes the shahada. He says, La ilaha illallah. The power of faith. Faith transforms people. What was it, if not faith, that enabled Noah alayhi salam, to build a boat when everybody laughed at him? What? The waters are going to come here, 500 miles away from the ocean? They laughed at him. He built it. What was it if it was not faith? What was it if not faith that impelled the great Anbiya to do what they did? Ibrahim alayhi salam, Nimrod prepares for him a fire. Says to the people, throw him into the fire. What was it if not faith that enabled him to get into the fire? And what happens to the fire? It becomes a rose garden. Faith transforms even hell into heaven. The difference between hell and heaven is the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is faith that transforms people. What was it if it was not faith that made Musa alayhi salam go up and says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I want to see you. What audacity for a human being to say, I want to see you, and he would not be satisfied until the answer came and said, Lan tarani. Lan tarani means never will you be able to see me. Not that you will be able to see me. Lan tarani. You will never be able to see me. What was it if it was not faith that made our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? He went to Taif. For what? He said, say la ilaha illallah. Just say la ilaha illallah. And they stoned him. And they let loose the boys, the urchins, and they kept throwing stones at him until he was bleeding. And he took refuge in a little garden. What was it if it was not faith that made him raise his hands in prayers and say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, forgive these people. Because from amongst them will be believers who will carry the torch of Islam, the light of Islam, to the farthest corners of the earth. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described him. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. You are the mercy of all humankind. Faith brings out mercy. Faith brings out courage. Faith brings out steadfastness. Faith brings out wisdom. Let's give a couple of examples of wisdom. It's not just people, battles, horses, and all of that. Let's look at the 8th century of the Islamic. This is all for the young people. We have a rich history. A history that is unlike any other history. We have great people who have preceded us, on whose shoulders we stand. We don't know them. Get to know them. Read the Quran, get to know your history, study science. Let me give you some examples from science. All of us know Imam Abu Hanifa. Radiallahu anhu. Imam Abu Hanifa is sometimes referred to as Al-Imam Al-Azam because he was the first of the 4 great Imams. Born in the year 700, passed away circa 760. That he was the architect of the Hanafi school of fiqh is known. We know that. What we don't know is that he was also a great scientist. He was a mathematician of repute. In the year 760, when Khalifa al-Mansur wanted to found the city of Baghdad because the Islamic Empire had extended all the way from the river Sindh in what is today Pakistan into the Pyrenees Mountains in France, and he needed a central location. The center of gravity had shifted to the east. So he found a bend, around the bend, a location, and he asked for an architect. Who but Imam Abu Hanifa? He called up Imam Abu Hanifa and says, I want to found a city. And you have to help me. Those days, you did not have computers. You did not have CAD. You did not have space science. You did not have cloud. You did not have any of that. You didn't even have paper most of the time. Yes, there was papyrus from Egypt, and there was some crude paper from China. But how are you, as an architect, going to lay out an entire city, and more importantly, going to convince this Khalifa that your plan is a sound one? Imam Abu Hanifa was undeterred. He procured cotton seeds. One of the characteristics of cotton seed is that some of the cotton seeds contain phosphorus. If you burn them, they give out blue light. He conceived of the plan and asked the people to lay out in detail a plan for the city, complete plan, on the ground, with cotton seeds, delineating the boundaries of the palace, the place for the soldiers, the bazaar, the Jami' Masjid, places for people to live. And on a moonless night, he built a tower, asked the Khalifa to come up on the tower, and he ordered that the cotton seeds be set fire to. When the cotton seeds burned, the Khalifa was able to see the entire layout of the city, and he said, Wallah, I accept it. That's how Baghdad was founded, the great city of Baghdad, which is now ruined and spoiled. He was the founder. Imam Abu Hanifa was the architect of the city of Baghdad. Not only that, he knew standardization. If you work in Washington, D.C., you would know anything in here has to have a standard. Without standards, you don't move forward in scientific endeavor. Everyone went into the brick business because the Khalifa was building a new capital city and there was money to be made. The same thing that happens today. And there was no control, no quality control, no standardization. Imam Abu Hanifa said, what you have to do is to bring me 1,000 bricks to each of the so-called contractors, so those who wanted to build bricks using the mud from the river Tigris. And he said, lay them out, stack them up in stacks of 1,000. And he measured the distances, the length, width, and the height, and he was able to determine that for 1,000 of these bricks, it has to have this dimension, and hence the standardization was established, and the beautiful city of Baghdad was built. Giving you these examples, one can go on, the time is limited. Faith. What was it that enabled Imam Abu Hanifa to achieve what he achieved? Not only was he the founder of the school of fiqh, not only was he an architect, not only was he the father of standardization, not only was he father of dialectic, the dialectic that we give credit to the Europeans, in the sense that he did not write down any edicts. He would divide up his students into two groups and ask them to come up with the contradictory opinions, and he would not okay them, he would not accept them until the two groups came back with a consensus. That's how the Hanafi fiqh evolved. And that's how this is the most broadest applications of all the schools of fiqh. He was an inventor of the dialectic method. And on and on and on. My dear brothers and sisters, we have a rich legacy. It springs from the Quran. The Quran has answers to all of this. We have a rich legacy in terms of history. Get to know who you are. If you don't know your history, other people will tell you your history. They will tell you who you are, which is what is happening today. Know what contributions you made to science so that you can go on and make additional contributions to science. Know what it was that you built so that you can contribute to something that can be built tomorrow. Know about the architects who built the Taj Mahal. Know about the architects who built the Mosque of Omar. Know about the architects who built the Blue Mosque in Istanbul. Know your history. Know who you are. And it all springs from faith. It all springs from La ilaha illallah. If anyone asks you, I want to read the Quran, but it's so difficult for me. It's so difficult for me. Tell them that the gist of the Quran is very simple. It is La ilaha illallah. That's what it is. It's the focus. It's the axis. It's the axis of Islamic history. It's the axis of Islamic culture. It's the axis of Islamic thinking. It's the axis of Islamic philosophy. It's the axis for Islamic life. It's the axis for your future and my future. Inshallah, with the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we will study the Quran. We'll get to know its message. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help our young people to study the Quran. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide these young people, our young people, as not so young people, to understand the Quran and to act upon it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us to know our history. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us to know ourselves so that we can serve Him, which is the reason He has created us. La hawla qawlu hadha wa astaghfirullah. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم. قال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل محمد. Times are trying. When we look at Islam in America today, we know that many people come into the fold of Islam and take the Shahada and say, La ilaha illallah. Many of us have given the Shahada to people. Some one, some two. In a gathering like this, a distinguished gathering like this, which consists of successful entrepreneurs, scientists, scholars, young people, students, great students who go to great universities, alhamdulillah, Islam is spreading. But at the same time, we have to be aware of the fact it's like a sieve. There are people who are also leaving. And why are they leaving? Because we fail to communicate the inner meaning of Shahada. We fail to communicate the inner meaning of belief, of faith. What does La ilaha illallah mean? How does La ilaha illallah, or how does the Quran answer the basic questions facing humankind? The basic questions are simple. Who am I? Why am I here? How did I come here? Where am I going? Basic, simple questions. And these questions, the answers to these questions, the Quran provides in very simple language. The Quran is not a complex book. It can be for those with knowledge. But for most of us, it is a simple book. It needs to be understood. These answers to the questions that people face, both Muslim and non-Muslim, we must know. Indeed, in our Sunday schools and other schools, alhamdulillah, they're doing a great job. But it would also be very useful, very helpful to contain this sieve that we have, the egress, people walking away from the fold of faith. We must communicate to people in simple language the answers to the questions that they face, the answers to the basic questions that they face. Who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? What is Islam? Simple, one sentence. They're all in the Quran. Bismillah. Let's pray. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا. ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا. ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. فاذكروا الله واذكركم واستجب لكم وتعالى وأولى وأعظم وأتم وأكبر. وأقم الصلاة.